At the end of last week, Amazon Prime decided to use San Diego Comic-Con to unveil the second trailer for their Rings of Power Season 2. And well, it proves what we all suspected. Actually, it might even be worse. It's almost here, the second season of Amazon's embattled adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's classic fantasy epic. In the next couple of weeks, I plan on making a video covering my thoughts on Season 1, why it's one of the worst adaptations to appear on either the big or small screen, and why watching it was equal to the head trauma of repeatedly bashing my head against a wall for 8 hours straight. But for now, let's talk about Amazon's newest trailer for the second season of this dumpster fire. First of all, let me say that the trailer itself is badly put together. It starts with a voiceover by Guyladriel, only she isn't really Guyladriel. The character created for the Rings of Power is not the same character that appears in Tolkien's books. So I'm going to borrow the nickname Nerdrotic coined for her and call her Guyladriel.
Gilgalad has sent Guyladriel, the Girlbarian.
Guyladriel opens the trailer with a voiceover explaining the threat that Sauron poses to Middle-earth, how he seeks to bend the minds of people to his will.
He seeks to rule it not only through conquest, but by bending the minds of all its peoples to his own.
Guyladriel explains that to accomplish his goal, Sauron doesn't need armies, he only needs rings.
And for that he needs not armies, but rings.
Now, I don't know if this piece of dialogue is from the show itself or just an ominous voiceover for the trailer, but either way it causes some massive problems. Remember, it was Guyladriel who came up with the idea of creating the rings at the end of the first season. Sauron's original plan seemed to be to create one ring, but Guyladriel proposed making 3, believing that if they split the power across more than one ring, and consequently more than one wielder, they would be able to dilute Sauron's influence and exert their own instead. A plan that we know is doomed to failure, because we know the story. We know what happens later on. And here we find one of the biggest problems with Rings of Power. I mean, besides the identity politics, the feminist propaganda, the political allegorizing which bastardizes Tolkien's work. Beyond all that is the fundamental flaw inherent in prequels. The problem with prequel stories is that the audience knows information about the characters and story that come later. That means it's very hard to set up reasonable stakes that can carry drama and intrigue. Because we know that characters like Guyladriel, Elrond, or Isildur are never in any real danger, because they appear later in the story. We know that Sauron does become the Dark Lord after deceiving the people of Middle-earth. So how do you fill in the blanks between where we are now and what happens later in a way that adds depth and value to the story? This isn't impossible, as evidenced with Godfather Part 2, half of which is dedicated to telling backstory. Though not considered better than their predecessors, Monsters University and Rogue One are accepted as decent prequels to stories that we already know. Not to mention The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which takes place before A Fistful of Dollars and for a few dollars more, making it technically a prequel. So while not impossible, it is difficult. It takes skilled writers to pull it off. When your writers are not skilled, when they don't know what they're doing, they don't have any respect for the source material they are following, and when they are intent on pursuing agenda over story, then you get stuff like The Acolyte and Rings of Power. In the first 30 seconds of this trailer, we have Guyladriel admit that Sauron can use the rings to bend people's minds to his will, as part of his conquest of Middle-earth. If this is known, then how did it come to pass? If characters like Guyladriel are aware of the threat, how do they fall victim to it? Well, as evidenced by the first season, it seems likely that this happens because all of our main characters are incredibly incompetent and stupid. See, the trailer goes on to show us Elrond attempting to be the voice of reason.
No! In choosing to wear those rings, you have all become his collaborators.
The trailer makes it seem as if he is protesting the use of the rings, warning of their danger, concerns that Gilgalad brushes off, as does Guyladriel. And think about that for a moment. Following the first season, knowing how Sauron already deceived, manipulated, and used them, our hero is again insisting in all her self-righteousness that she is right and others are wrong.
I know you believe this ring is deceiving me, but I believe it is guiding me.
That she can best Sauron and isn't being deceived this time, which we know she is because of her voiceover seconds before. Elsewhere, we see Celebrimbor falling for whatever this is, and other returning characters playing out pointless side stories that are just there to eat up screen time. So, what we are about to witness isn't a slow-rolling destruction of a character like Walter White in Breaking Bad, watching the consequences of his own actions finally catch up with him. Instead, we're going to see the utter failure of the good guys, who by all rights should know better. They won't be bested by superior maneuvers of a more intelligent adversary, but by their own incompetence and stupidity. And there is a lot of key-jangling nonsense in this trailer. Hey, there's the Balrog, there's Tom Bombadil, there's Shelob, there's more battles and more repurposed dialogue.
Who is this man?
He is no man.
Make no mistake, this is all an attempt for the Ravagers writing and producing this crap to claim that they are being faithful to the books.
Go back to the books. Go back to the books. Go back to the books.
There's absolutely no reason for the Balrog or Tom Bombadil to appear in this story, except as a desperate attempt to add legitimacy to something that is not Lord of the Rings. The tone of this trailer makes it abundantly clear that they are still taking themselves far too seriously. They still think they're being clever, and they think that we are as mindless as they are. One thing conspicuously absent from this trailer, from both trailers we've gotten so far, is Sauron himself. The showrunners have said that there will be a focus on the bad guys in this season. We've been told that they will be delving into Sauron's story and mindset. Given his very limited representation in the promotional material points to one of a couple of possibilities. One, the showrunners have overemphasized how prominent the Sauron storyline will be. Or two, they are intentionally holding it back. My cynical side leans toward it being the latter. The internet hasn't exactly been kind over past statements from J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, comparing Sauron to Tony Soprano or Walter White. So if Amazon is at all concerned about the public perception of these story elements, they may be playing them close to the vest. But back to the main point here. Rings of Power's Comic-Con trailer solidifies for me that the Season 2 will continue to double down in the same vein as Season 1, building a story that only works if the characters act in a way contrary to their nature, making decisions that are inconsistent and lack any semblance of reason. Honestly, I'm beginning to doubt they plan to fold this story seamlessly into the Peter Jackson films. Instead, they may be anticipating and even hoping to spawn an entirely separate and original interpretation of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. None of the characters or events they've shown so far bear any resemblance to the Jackson trilogies or the books themselves. As I said before, I do hope to bring you my own breakdown of Season 1, to show why it's an utter failure in its own right, but also in the light of the impending Season 2, and why Season 2 will be just as bad, if not worse, if the viewership ends up failing more than it did in Season 1. It's entirely possible Amazon will be forced to give up the next 3 seasons they plan to make, and that would be a good thing. But remember, this is all just one Rebel's opinion. What do you think? Do you like Rings of Power? What are your thoughts on the new trailer for Season 2? Let me know in the comments. Like the video and subscribe to the channel so you'll get all the updates from Rebel Normal.